I'm Jon Wensky, Vice Chair of Shrewsbury School Committee. In November of 2016, the school committee approved a project to raise private funding for a brand new artificial turf field at Shrewsbury High School. And the benefits were clear. Low maintenance, cost-effective field that allowed our athletes to play multiple sports in a single season. Also, being able to play in inclement weather and not worried about the natural grass conditions when it rains. And then also, from a rental opportunity perspective, other communities might have an interest in renting this field for their athletic events because of our close proximity to Route 290. 18 months later, $1.8 million in private funding was raised through the generosity of local businesses, organizations, and the residents of Shrewsbury. And in September of 2018, David J. Adams Memorial Field at Central One Federal Credit Union Stadium was open to the public. On this program, we'll talk about the benefits to the town 1 year later of this brand new athletic facility. We'll talk about the sports that are now able to play on this field and the opportunities that have arisen as a result of rental opportunities from other sports events. Welcome to School Talk. Okay, I'm here with Jay Costa. He's the athletic director for Oak Middle School and also Shrewsbury High School. Jay, welcome to School Talk.
Thank you very much.
Or in this case, Turf Talk, I guess is what we're talking today. So we're here on the stadium field, as we call it now, but I think back to a year ago before we opened the field here and what your life was like as athletic director. You said you've been athletic director for 14 years.
Yep.
So just tell me about how life has changed in terms of being in your role, but also managing the athletic program in Shrewsbury.
Yeah, so I mean, we've grown dramatically over the past few years. I look back 14 years ago when I first started, I think we averaged about, 300 to 400 athletes in the fall season. And now we're averaging over 600 to 700 athletes. So we've grown dramatically, which is a great thing. It's a great thing for kids in our community. With the growth, we've looked at, the ability to where we're going to put kids, with the different games and the different contests. So that has increased a little bit. But getting the turf last year has also decreased some of the stress.
Sure.
Because especially when you're that stressful situation, always about lunchtime on a rainy day or a bad weather day, you're nervous about, well, do you play? You look at the contests that are ahead in the season, or especially if it's early in the year, you're like, do you cancel the game so you don't ruin the field for the rest of the season? So it's made it a little bit easier in making that decision because you're not worried about field conditions. Now you're just worried about, okay, is it safe enough for athletes to play in? Obviously thunder and lightning we postpone, but if it's a light rain, you can play a little bit more of the contest.
Exactly, and we talk about multi-sport use, right? Because I think before maybe the football program might have been the favorite because of the weekly games, and then if you could get in the other sports depending on the conditions of the natural grass fields, then you could do that. But now, artificial turf, you can use it for many sports. Can you give us a little insight into the sports that are now using the field, over the last year?
Yeah, so prior to the turf, we were getting maybe, we had football playing and varsity soccer. And that was tough because you were only probably getting about 30 to maybe 40 contests a year on the turf field. We weren't even playing spring sports on the stadium field. Now it has opened it up unlimited for all our programs, and the team that's really benefited from it is our field hockey program. While we've had one of the best grass fields in the state, the game is just played differently on turf. So what it has really done for our field hockey program is that it was already a strong Central Mass and state caliber type program. I think it's elevated our level of play. So that's been exciting. We played all our home games up here on the turf for both the varsity and JV field hockey. Soccer games. Soccer spots where we're standing on here is usually the worn out spot where the football team stands. And there was a lot of moisture up here when we had grass. So the kids would kind of rip it away, and that was the still 5 to 10 yards of playing surface for the soccer team. So now soccer doesn't have to worry about having faded spots. So it has really, for all our fall programs, it's gotten now, instead of probably 30 events, I think we were over 100 events just in the fall, maybe even more than that. But then now it opens up to spring, where our lacrosse programs are able to play. So both varsity and JV, boys and girls lacrosse, are able to play, and they average in probably about 50 games between the two teams. So they have an opportunity to be on here. And then our track and field programs have been able to benefit, because normally I'm nervous in the spring about growing grass, getting it ready for the fall. Now, they can do their exercises, do their stretching, not have to go to another spot in our stadium to get ready for their track meets.
Sure, and that's another thing that I know, that the entire track around the field was resurfaced as part of the project, right?
Yeah, so that just so happy our track athletes have been waiting so long for the resurfacing, which we actually had town approval a few years back, but we kind of had the vision of having the turf field. So I'm just excited for our track athletes. Last year, the surface was just so much better for them to run on, and we've had some pretty good athletes in the past couple of years in our track and field. We actually have one of our relay teams make nationals. So now we used to host the big track and field meets, the district relays or the district class meets, and now we're getting those back, which is great exposure for our community.
Yeah, I know every time I pass through the high school, there's always some type of event going on in the gym. I know a lot of gymnastic events, but now with the turf field, I'm sure that's opened up opportunities for rental of the stadium fields, because you think about the proximity of the field to where we are at 290. It becomes an appealing location, like all the indoor sports do. Have you seen opportunities coming your way to rent the stadium field?
Yeah, so especially our youth programs that are struggling. Parks and Rec does a great job of trying to get all the fields ready, but there's a lot of wear and tear. So the youth lacrosse has started talking about renting up here. Our Shrewsbury Youth Soccer was a very great donation with a $100,000 donation. So they've did that as a upfront rental. So we've been trying to get our youth soccer programs up here. Now, as far as outside communities, they were starting to get a lot of phone calls, and we were able to work together to create a policy around that. So we didn't do it this last fall to this summer, because we were still trying to get a feel of what our schedule would be like. But now that we got an idea of what that looks like, we will be opening it up to the community. And the other thing is MIA events. You look, for example, this fall, some of our teams were able to host playoff games. They were maybe 500 teams, but their power rating allowed them to get a home game. Okay. So the atmosphere up here, last week we hosted, because I offered our site up in August to be a host for the semifinals or the finals for soccer, we were able to host Shrewsbury St. John's playoff game. That's great. I mean, it was a football atmosphere up here, and it was amazing. So I think it's allowed for that to happen within the community, which is nice too.
Yeah, it's always a big event too, the local rivalries especially. I was here for St. John's Shrewsbury High School football game this year, and it was just, like you said, it's a great atmosphere. A lot of people from the community in Shrewsbury and outside, it was just a great location. So other semifinal playoff game opportunities in terms of using this field? Yeah,
so last night actually the MIA canceled some games on Tuesday due to the weather, and we're desperate for a site on this past Thursday night. So we hosted the state semifinal field hockey championships, which again, it just gives us an opportunity to showcase our facilities. We're easily located, you're right, off 290, so it makes it convenient for everyone. And the only negative is there's a little more hours here at the school, but we're so proud of what we did here, so it's worth that, the extra time that you're spending here. And showing what the community support that we had for the project.
Definitely, like you said, you're the host, kind of the ambassador to Shrewsbury athletics, and for those that choose to host their events here, it's a good thing to be at. So, and then in terms of inclement weather, we talked about it a little bit, but every time it's pouring rain, I think of you and the discussion you had previously about how you prep for games when you had a natural grass field, where there'd be puddles and there'd be just unsafe playing field out here. You'd have to farm out potentially a football game to maybe Assumption or another location that had a artificial turf field. How has that impacted you, and what are the costs involved for actually having to rent another facility because of weather?
Yeah, so it's reduced that dramatically for our program, at least within the sports that are played on a stadium type or 100-yard type field.
Sure.
We still have those costs for our baseball and softball programs, and actually it was funny, last spring, the baseball and softball people were jealous because lacrosse was out there on the first day of tryouts and they were full-blown, full season with no cancellations, where baseball was waiting and waiting because we had to wait for the grass to dry or the snow to melt and all that. So it has prevented us from having to go rent other facilities, and that was cost. Like, for example, last year when the project wasn't done and we were looking, I think just for one football game we were around $2,000 in rental.
Wow.
So it's reduced that. We've rented local facilities as far as for lacrosse tryouts, soccer. When we were getting to tournament play and we knew we were going to be playing on turf, we were renting those out to get our kids exposed to that. So now we don't have to do that.
That's great. I mean, it's a cost savings, right? Which is great in terms of inclement weather. Also, we were talking to Angela Snell, who's the superintendent of parks, about maintenance. And as you can see behind us, we've got some maintenance going on here now. In terms of preparation for your games, obviously it's a lot less involved. It allows Angela's team to go service other fields as well, and that plays in your preparation as well.
So this being the end of November, this is only the second time they've had to be on our field. They as far as painting goes, we didn't paint in some of the lines because we didn't want to confuse a lot of the athletes during their seasons. But the hash marks was actually an issue when we were putting in our field. They were changing the rules at the MIA, so we didn't sew those in. So we're only touching up, just trying to make it look good for Thanksgiving, which is nice. So talking to Ryan from Parks has freed them up to do some other things.
Sure.
They've been able to focus on some of our other grass fields up here, other fields within the community, Dean Park. It's freed them up to do some other things, which is nice.
That's great. So Jay, one other thing, I actually have a question for you on the scoreboard, right? We had some improvements to the scoreboard with a nice video board. I was here, like I said, for St. John Shrewsbury. I saw not only the graphics for first down and fourth down to get the crowd going, but also the simulcast on the local Worcester TV station that was broadcasting that. What's that done for the atmosphere in the stadium?
It's made it like a college atmosphere, and it's been awesome. We're only the second school in the state to have one of those jumbotrons here. It's allowed us to do some advertising, which will help us raise funds, for eventual maybe replacement of the turf in the future or just other things that we might need. But it was really cool to have that. And it's also created, so we have 2 students running the computer, along with Greg Marceau, our tech director here. We have 2 students running it, and they've created a lot of the graphics, and they're working on building resumes for themselves because they're looking to go into this field at the college level. So we try to identify those students, give them an opportunity, and it's great. It's 2 of our crew guys that, they're like, I never would have had this opportunity if it wasn't for that.
Right. And I saw in the dedication of the field earlier this year, they played the video that the students produced. Very well done, and it gives you another opportunity for students, like you said, to apply real world skills into video production, which is great.
Exactly. So we're excited. I mean, it's unlimited resources we could do with that, and we're just tapping it a little bit. But we're looking at next June we'll be hosting the All-Star football game, and Channel 3 has talked about doing live interviews during the game while the kids are playing. So again, I think it would be just another unique opportunity for people around Central Mass to come in and see what we do here.
That's great. Well, Jay Costa, thanks for joining us on School
Thank
Talk.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back. Now, Angela and I are here in the press box. We know the athletes are probably better equipped to be out in the field today. It's cold, it's windy, it's snowing actually. Maybe you can't see that. But I'm here with Angela Snell, who's the Superintendent of Public Facilities and Parks. Welcome to School Talk.
Thank you.
I know we talked a few years ago about the potential for having an artificial turf field here at the high school. Now we're a year in. We always talked about the challenges of maintaining a natural grass field. What have some of the benefits been now, a year later, of having the artificial turf?
Well, it's been a benefit that the parks crew doesn't have to line it every week.
Right.
I mean, that was a huge time, project with that, especially during football season where you're doing the numbers and the lines and the hash marks. So we're definitely saving on time with that. We don't have to mow the grass.
It's a good benefit,
Yes.
right? Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
we're not watering it, so we're saving a lot of money with, on irrigation costs. So it's been a benefit.
That's good. And your crew is able to spend more time maybe on the natural grass fields around town that need more work, right?
Right. Some of the, so now that we're not painting at the high school, we're actually painting fields at the middle school because they just started middle school sports, which is great. So we were able to, line the football field over there for field hockey, and baseball and softball we do in the springtime for middle school, which is something we didn't have before.
Sure. Yeah, actually, it's a good point because we've expanded the 8th grade sports,
Right.
so there's more use happening on those fields,
Yeah.
but also there's quite a bit of use happening on our new field here, not just with high school sports, but community sports as
Right.
well. So, in terms of the process of maintaining this field, we were talking a little earlier about, what your crew might need to do just to groom the field. What's the process like there?
So just to compare it to what we used to do, like they used to mow the grass on the football field twice a week. It probably took about an hour and a half to do that. Now they're doing like a sweeping process, which is just picking up any debris, bobby pins, things like that. They only have to do that once a week. It takes 2 hours, so the time is about the same, but we can schedule it better. It's not like, oh, we got to mow it because the grass is too high. So it's a little more flexible on when we can do things like that. And then once a month is the grooming, just evening out the pellets and making sure everything's smooth. They'll do visual inspections, around the goal areas, make sure things are going well. But it's less time consuming than what we were doing in the past. We don't have to aerate the field, a couple times a year. We're not overseeding. So again, those things, the crew can do things elsewhere.
Right, exactly. And talk
Yeah.
about grooming the field, I think also we talked about with natural grass, just getting it ready for a game. For football is really challenging
Yes.
because some of the areas are there's some patchy areas where you need to kind of fill in, and
Right.
now you don't have those
Right,
issues
right. We're not
anymore.
buying loam and filling in holes and that kind of stuff as well.
Right.
And the football field lining was a huge process because you had, big stencils for the numbers, and probably had 4 people out there, 4 or 5 people for a morning, doing that. So.
Right. And now those 4 or 5 people can spend the time on even the baseball field
Yeah.
across from us or
Right.
wherever else
Right,
they're needed.
right. We have a lot
is
of things
great.
that need to be done around town.
Yeah, you were
So,
saying
yeah.
there's a backlog,
Yes,
right, that
yeah,
you need to
just
kind of get
maintenance,
to.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's been helpful to not have to worry about that.
that's great.
So one other thing that we do for the field, they do line the field for field hockey and the boys lacrosse and girls lacrosse. It's 2 different sets of lines. We use a special paint that'll last the whole season, so we just do that once. We'll line it and then it's done. So it's not like we got to touch it up every week. So, just so people know, there's other sports that use it.
Exactly. It's one of the key benefits that we had talked about before the turf was installed, was that it's not just a football field, right? It's multi-use, multi-sports, boys and girls soccer, lacrosse, and also football.
Right.
So it's great to see that we're able to accommodate all student athletes on the stadium
Yeah.
field.
They also do the hash marks for the football field, but again, they're doing that once, maybe twice, depending on, when Thanksgiving game is, if we have a Thanksgiving game. But again, once, it's better than every week.
Once and not, 5 or 6 times.
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, there were some times you'd have to touch it up twice a week because if, between a varsity and a JV game, if it was raining and,
Right, depending on the weather
Right.
and maybe
Yeah.
how the football players might tear it
Yeah,
up a little bit
right.
more than other sports. You
Right.
might have had to attend to
Touch
it a
it
lot
up.
more.
Yep.
So,
Right.
oh, that's a great point.
And it's also nice, sometimes you see the phys ed classes are out here, so they don't have to walk all the way to the back field.
Right.
So that's nice to see.
Right. Yeah. Actually, just this morning, I saw on social media there was a posting from the stadium field of some community lacrosse events where they were
Oh, yeah.
teaching younger kids how to play lacrosse, which I
Right.
thought was great. And again, another great use for the town.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, for your time. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your crew and the support they give the town.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks.